product you're using. We won't cover all that in this class, but a Scrum Master needs to help the product owner do some of those things. They pair up. I'd like to show you a video clip that explains what an excellent product owner would do. So we have a summary. So the rest of this class, we have a good picture of what an excellent product owner would do. Now, we won't go deeper in the product owner than this, except for one section. But let's dive into the product owner for just a moment. Keep your Scrum Master hat on, but we're going to dive into the product owner for a moment.
Let's talk about agile software development from the perspective of the product owner. Here's Pat. She's a product owner. She has a product vision that she's really passionate about. She doesn't know the details of what her product is going to do, but she knows why we're building the product, and what problem it's going to solve, and for who. She talks about it all the time. Here are the stakeholders. They're the people who are going to use and support or in any way be affected by the system being developed. Pat's vision is that these people here will love our system and use it all the time and tell their friends about it. The stakeholder needs and Pat's ideas are expressed as user stories here. For example, if this was a flight booking system, people need to be able to search for a flight, and maybe that would be one user story. Both Pat and the stakeholders have lots of ideas, so Pat helps turn these into concrete user stories. Now, somebody has to actually build the system. So here they are, a small, co-located, cross-functional, self-organizing development team. Since this is an agile team, they don't save up for a big bang release at the end. Instead, they release early and often. In this case, they usually release about 4 to 6 stories per week. So that is their capacity. Capacity is easy to measure. Just count the number of stories released per week. Some stories are big, so they count as 2. Some are small and count as a half. But all in all, it adds up to about 4 to 6 stories per week. Some people call these story points, but I'm just going to call it stories per week. In order to maintain this pace and not get bogged down by manual regression testing, the team invests heavily in automated testing and continuous integration. So every story has at least one automated acceptance test at the feature level, and most of the code has automated unit tests. The problem is, here are a bunch of stakeholders asking for all kinds of stuff, and they sure aren't going to be limited to 4 to 6 ideas per week. They have lots of ideas and lots of wishes, and every time we deliver something to them, they'll get even more ideas and ask for even more stuff. So what happens if we try to please them, try to do everything they ask for? We'll get overflow. Suppose the team starts working on 10 news stories per week. If the input is 10, and the output is 4 to 6, the team will get overloaded. That will cause multitasking, demotivation, and all kinds of bad stuff. And ultimately, it'll lower output and lower quality. It's a lose-lose proposition. It's kind of like trying to shove more paper into a printer to make it print faster, or shoving more cars onto an already crammed highway system. It just doesn't work. It just makes things worse. So what do we do about this? Well, the Scrum and XP way of avoiding this problem is called yesterday's weather. The team says, well, the past few weeks, we've finished 4 to 6 features per week. So which 4 to 6 features shall we build this week? And the product owner's job is to figure out of all possible stories in the whole universe, which 4 to 6 stories shall we deliver next? The compound way is to limit work in progress, or limit WIP, W-I-P. Suppose the team decides that 5 is the optimal number of stories to be worked on simultaneously. They've learned that that's just enough to keep everybody busy without causing overload. So they decide that 5 is their WIP limit. Whenever they finish one story, they'll accept one new story, thereby making sure that they never break the limit of 5 ongoing stories. Both of these approaches work fine, in the sense that the team will have just enough work to do and they'll be able to work fast and effectively. A side effect, though, is that there will be a queue forming in front of the team, and that queue in Scrum is called the product backlog. The queue needs to be managed. Suppose stakeholders keep asking for 10 new stories every week, and the teams deliver 4 to 6 stories every week. That means the queue will just keep getting longer and longer, right? So before you know it, you have a 6-month-long wish list in the backlog and growing. That means that on average, every story that the team delivers is something that somebody asked for 6 months ago. How agile is that? So there's really only one way to stop the queue from getting out of control, and that word is no. It is the most important word for product owner, and Pat practices it every day in front of the mirror. Saying yes to a new feature.
Knew in advance that they had an event they had to attend it as well, or I don't know if it was an event, something. So our 2 folks from Raytheon did head out. I hope everyone had a chance to network with them. We have shared the emails across all the trainers and coaches at least, and I hope for all the certified Scrum Master students who are new, you're the focus of yesterday and today. I hope you had a chance to meet them. I got a message this morning that our account lead at Toyota sent this video. We'll see if it actually plays full screen on the screen or not. Nope. Let me see if I can remedy that. Hold please, your call is very important to us.
Joe, the second TV's on. Is that okay?
No, could you turn it on? The power button is on the back on the bottom right.
Chris is already on. Or
Somebody did.
yeah.
Give people.
I was waiting for rock, paper, scissors, but
Here is a video from the build last night. I hope everybody got as much build as you desired. I think there was plenty of opportunity. Is it coming? Almost there. Yeah. Here's a recap from some of what happened last night.
Demo Wiki Speed Midwood Washington Shop, February 9th, 2017. We have Car 8 with the racing slicks attached. The steering rack is being upgraded. We have Bellevue Community College interns helping with all three cars, the NSX2. We have Car 7 getting prepped for track test duty. William Newey, product owner, working with one of the six sub-team backlog. DJ and Freeman earlier, sensation mixing live in the shop, live in the mix, Wiki Speed Washington, United States shop. This is probably the best build party that could ever happen. State of Washington government representing 5 people, Bellevue Community College, Team Wiki Speed, Scrum Incorporated, Formula Inc., 6 teams in parallel doing a Scrum and hardware build, network with Scrum and Scrums and Meta Scrum from the Scrum and Scrum framework. Thanks everybody.
So the coach at Toyota texted or chatted me through the Scrumming team chat this morning, saying I just sent that to the top executive team at Toyota, like including Toyota-san, and I'm like, he said they need to understand what Scrum really is. I was like, well, I trust you. I trust you.
You do now.
So apparently that just happened. That went out, and I look forward to an even better edited version of that experience. But yes, for those of you that enjoyed last night, I hope that sums up some of what you experienced in the event. And for those of you who didn't experience last night, I'm glad you got a Cliff Notes version just now.
Is that not on the Wikispeed YouTube?
Yes, it is on the Wikispeed YouTube for everyone to enjoy. Back to class. What does it look like this team player is going to do to any impediment that gets in the way? Yes. There is a mindset to being on a Scrum team. And it involves being playful and friendly, and it involves crushing your impediments. The mindset of Scrum has everything to do with not, that's not my problem. It has everything to do with, I will eat that, whatever that is. Yesterday, we mentioned all the 3 roles of Scrum, all the 5 meetings of Scrum, all the 3 outputs of Scrum, and that's all of Scrum. 353, 11 laws, that's it. This is a certified Scrum Master class. If the Scrum Master doesn't know how to host those 5 meetings with the 3 roles in them to create those 3 outputs, we're not going to have Scrum. The Scrum Master is our final backup. Hopefully the team can run those meetings themselves and create those outputs themselves. The Scrum Master's job is to make sure it happens and train the team if they don't know. So today we're going to practice those in the first half of the day. Our first Scrum meeting of the 5 meetings in chronological order is? Yes, it is sprint planning. Thank you very much. Let's do it together. Here is an actual team. We'll show their real backlog in a moment. They're pulling from the top of the product backlog. So our product owner has walked into the team during the appointed time at the appointed place to do sprint planning at the start of the sprint. And the team pulls from the top of the product backlog to assemble their sprint backlog. There is something important that happens here that isn't said often enough. The product owner then looks at the sprint backlog. Now that's simply sized just by the yesterday's weather of the team, their last 3 sprints running average. And if it's sprint 1, they take a guess, right? But it's their last 3 sprints running average. So this is not a negotiation as to how big this is. It's just automatic and easy and quick. The product owner then looks at the sprint backlog and says, will that achieve the sprint goal that I would like? Will that create the demo I want to see and my stakeholders want to see to reduce risk, get people excited, and teach us something about the product or service or whatever it is we're building. The product owner then will dynamically make trades from the sprint backlog and the product backlog with the team's help. All of the product backlog is already estimated by the team during which Scrum ceremony? Product backlog refinement. One brave soul felt brave enough this morning to say to the room, yes, during product backlog refinement, the entire product backlog has been estimated. Using the technique that Diane and William walked us through yesterday, it takes maybe an hour the first time, even for a long product backlog. And every refinement afterwards, maybe 5 or 10, maybe 15 minutes to check the estimates, because they've all been estimated before, and we're just checking if they've moved, if we've learned more about them, or estimating just the new stuff. So this is all estimated. So the product owner is going to try to swap items of similar size to make a better demo that is more exciting and reduces risk. This is actually the critical part of sprint planning. From that, the product owner is going to write the sprint goal. The team will inform the product owner of their technical dependencies. I understand you want to switch these items, product owner, but this step really has to come before this step. They'll have that conversation here in sprint planning. But the bulk of estimation's already been done. So it's not an estimating meeting, which I see a lot of newer coaches and trainers say, but that's not the highest value of this time. It's to discover a sprint goal. And because that's discovered by making trade-offs between these two backlogs, keeping it the same size within yesterday's weather, the team is involved in the conversation about the sprint goal even though the product owner owns it. From the moment the team agrees to the sprint goal, the team now owns the sprint backlog and they can change it any time whether or not the product owner wants them to. What they're able to do now is achieve commander's intent, which has been made explicit in the sprint goal. The product owner owns the product backlog. It is their job to update it every day. The team owns the sprint backlog. It is their job to update it every day to make an even better plan to achieve the sprint goal. Once the team has agreed on the sprint goal and their initial plan of how at least today they think they're going to get it done, they do write big and visible. This is typically a poster in the teamwork area, or if we're a distributed team, everyone's desktop background. They'll write the sprint goal. In this case, they chose beta ready release. The sprint backlog consists of these work items, and here's their estimated velocity, which is their yesterday's weather. Then, in my opinion, as a coach, critical, they write, here's when the sprint starts, here's when it ends, here's where and when we meet for daily scrum, and here's where and when we meet to show the demo. So at the start of the sprint, the team has agreed where and when they're going to show what? The sprint goal. This solidifies the commitment and lets them work as a team. Without this, it's hard to get a team behavior. And we end up having a group of people working together, but not a team helping each other. Then they write the team members. They wrote Jim, Erica. Erica is currently playing the role of the Scrum Master. Tom, and they have an impediment here. Tom is allocated to 2 projects. He's told he's on this project 75% of the time. If he's told he's on another project 25% of the time, we know that doesn't actually mean he has 25% of his time here and 75% of his time here, because there's context switching loss of 20%. So they know they're not going to get all of Tom that they wish they could. So they make it visible on a big poster in the team wall, and they show this anytime they show the sprint burn down. So if someone says, I need this sooner, they say, can you fix Tom? Can you fix Tom's allocation? That way the conversation isn't about work harder, it's about what is the impediment. So they make it visible. The whole team knows who they are and where they're meeting. Here's what it looks like in detail. The team asked the Scrum Master to put up their product backlog, or the top of it, in sticky notes on the wall. And they arranged them from more important to less important from the product owner's perspective. The product owner writes their wished goal on the wall. In this case, goal, beta ready release. The team says, migration tool is kind of big. That could mean a few things. Product owner, if we deliver user migration tool and transaction migration tool, is that what you mean, enough for beta ready release? The product owner says, yes, that's enough. So they've clarified. They delete the parent story and they've replaced it with 2 smaller stories. This is during sprint planning. Then they say deposit. Team, are we all on the same page as to what deposit means enough for beta ready release? We think it means these tasks: write a failing test, author automated acceptance test, reduce the technical debt around it. We think it means that. Product owner, if we show you the results of this at demo, is that exciting and meet your wish of beta ready release? The product owner says yes. There's only one step left then. They say, Scrum Master, can you make visible yesterday's weather? Everything on the left side of this line is likely to get done based on our historic velocity. Product owner, if we show you the stuff on the left side of this line at sprint demo, to you, does that mean beta ready release? In this case, the product owner says, absolutely, that's it. That's what we want. Now, sprint planning has happened. Yes, there was a question.
Can there be multiple goals from the product owner? Or is
Totally.
it better to have just one?
There totally can be multiple goals as long as they're sized to fit in the sprint.
Okay.
Yeah. That said, for a new team that hasn't, how can I say it? Many of us, well, not all of us may have experienced this yet, so this might sound kind of strange. For those that have, this will, I think, key something. There's a sound to a high-performing Scrum team. It has a sound. It's not quite loud talking, and it's not dead silence. There's a sound to collaborative, fast-paced work. And it's a very similar sound to a team that's running through a play they know well in a sporting event that they're practicing in scrimmage. In any domain, the sound is similar. If that sound is happening, and so not everyone may have had the privilege yet of hearing that sound, but maybe a bunch of us have. If that sound is emerging, the team is typically ready for multiple prioritized goals. Not all at the same priority. They've got to be prioritized. So if one and only one happens, we all know which one that is. That's very clear. If that has not emerged and the team is currently storming or forming or norming for whatever reason, maybe they were in that state, but something is shaking them up for now. Someone changed and they're getting used to it, or whatever the source might be. It's very high risk to have more than one goal, because that's one more thing for the team to have to worry about in addition to figuring out how to work together really fast. Does that resonate with the other coaches and trainers in the room? Does anyone have counter advice? That was Joe's opinion. That's not the Scrum Guide.
Plus one in that.
Okay, so an endorsement even. Thank you, Patrick. All right, well, to be continued.
Thank you.
So now we have sprint planning.
Joe? I'm
Sir, yes.
Didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah,
before
yeah.
we move on to the next slide.
I'll iterate through it, yes.
Question about reevaluating the goal. The goal's set at the beginning of the sprint planning meeting, or
Right.
towards the beginning, and then at some point when you or the product owner reprioritizes, and then Scrum Master makes visible yesterday's weather. Does that, if that changes the goal because, for example, the less important things cannot be done,
Right.
but that affects the goal, you have to reevaluate the goal?
Oh, I hear you. So in this case, this is kind of hilarious. This is a banking application these people are building, right? And if you notice, yesterday's weather says they can deposit money, but they can't withdraw it in the sprint. So that is what is happening here. This is a real example. This product owner says, yeah, in sprint 1, we'll just take money. And this happened, and it worked. In sprint 2, they could now release it as well. But but to your point, what if the product owner said, that's absolutely not beta ready release for us. We have to include at least one more item, which won't fit, right? In that case, yeah, they update the sprint goal, because the sprint goal is achievable,
Can you split them to two splits?
Yeah.
Like we did downstairs?
such that the sprint goal phrased for this sprint is achievable. This is where the morale as a multiplier of velocity comes from. Having an achievable sprint goal based on yesterday's weather, not because the team thinks if everything's perfect, we'll achieve it. No, based on our historic trend, we are likely to achieve it. Velocity and morale build on top of each other. So we would choose a piece of this that does fit in yesterday's weather, exactly to your point.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Patsy. We have seen some leadership teams, some executive teams beat up Scrum teams about their sprint commitment, saying things like, but you committed. That's not the point, and it doesn't help. So I'd like to clarify what the team's commitment to the sprint goal means. The team's commitment to the product owner is, we promise that we believe we can reach the sprint goal. We will do everything in our power to reach the goal and will inform you immediately if we have problems. Our product will be potentially shippable at the end of the sprint. If we fall behind schedule, we will negotiate with the product owner to decide what to do. If we get ahead of schedule, we will add stories from the product backlog in priority order. We will display our progress and status on a daily basis. Every story we do is complete, meaning tested, whatever complete needs to be for this context. Caveat, estimates are estimates. We will be early sometimes and late other times. We will document this normal variation with our sprint velocity. Make sense? This takes us to our second meeting in chronological order, the daily scrum, the 15-minute daily meeting. I'd like to show you where it came from. In fall of 1993, the first Scrum team launched, and they had 4 meetings. There are now 5 meetings of Scrum. They didn't have the daily meeting in their first sprint. The teams at Easel Corporation were still spending every Monday reading white papers of anything they could find documented to improve velocity and increase revenue for companies. During the first sprint, fall of 1993, they read this paper from Bell Labs. Bell Labs studied 82 companies, and they indexed percent communication saturation, or how well people understood the goal, by how many roles there were in the company. Roles are titles. So let me be a little more clear about communication saturation. If we walked up to this team and I asked, may I interview the members of this team independently in separate rooms, and the team says yes if they did. And if I were to ask you in a separate room from the team, what's the team's top priority goal? What's the team's plan to get it done? And in what architectural constraints does the team have to deliver it? And then let's say I asked Rosemary in a separate room the same question. The percent similarity of their answers is called communication saturation. And it's directly linked to how quickly the team delivers. Communication saturation clearly went up in Bell Labs studies the fewer roles there were in the company, in the organization they were studying. Bell Labs was trained, if they're looking for breakthrough innovation, you study the outliers, the data points that in typical statistical analysis you throw away. So they said, what about Microsoft versus Borland? These were both, not all companies were software companies, but these companies were software companies, and they were both writing operating systems code. When you compiled their code into assembly, machine language, and removed the no-ops, so it's not one-to-one comparable, but it's closer. It's closer to one-to-one comparable. The Borland developers were 52 times more productive than the Microsoft developers. Bell Labs said, well, why is that? And they ran a follow-up study at Borland to say, how come one Borland developer produced as much work as 52 Microsoft developers? They said, step 1 is Microsoft had almost 50 roles across the organization at that time, whereas Borland had 8. So that's 1. This, by the way, is why Scrum has 3 roles. Fewer roles, greater clarity. We don't have junior or senior or anything. HR might need those roles for salary tracking. That's fine. And to honor people's experience and network, that's fine. In a Scrum team, we only refer to each other by our roles and our names. That's it, for this reason, to drive up communication saturation. In Borland, they found they had a daily meeting. Does anybody have a guess what the topic of the daily meeting in Borland was that Bell Labs observed? Yes?
What's your roadblocks? Impediments?
It wasn't what are your impediments, interestingly.
Really?
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't what are your impediments.
Happiness.
That's not a, no, these are all good, right? That didn't happen to be. Is there another guess? I like the guesses though. Is there another guess? It was, what are we building? What is our goal? What is our plan to build it? And what are our architectural constraints to deliver it? He said it was so important that going over those with all the teams doing all their work every day would drive up communication saturation and equaled hyper productivity. the first Scrum team said, we have to do this. We have to adopt a daily meeting. In Sprint 2, January of 1994, they instituted the daily meeting. Now we had 353 of Scrum, all 5 meetings. They wanted to make sure the daily meeting was done effectively. At Borland, the daily meeting took a long time. In Scrum, they said we only have 15 minutes because we have all this work to do. We're trying to be hyper-productive on many dimensions. So how do we drive up the speed and efficacy of the meeting? The Scrum Master started playing rugby videos before every daily meeting, every daily stand-up, to try to get people's energy level up and build their focus. They decided on just one video very early on, they tell me. And I've had a chance to ask Jeff Sutherland and Mike Beadle, both who were on the very first Scrum team, well, do either of you still have a copy of that video? Because they both said it embodied perfectly the mindset that created an excellent daily meeting. I said, may I have a copy? And I got it. And I'd like to play it for you. According to the first Scrum team, this is the video that creates the best they've ever found, the mindset of an excellent daily stand-up meeting. What does it look like that team will do to an impediment? Yeah, they'll crush it. They'll crush it. Yes, Mike.
There is another version of YouTube where you even see them doing this.
Yeah. Where they're like, we kill you. So I had a chance to do some work in New Zealand. A brief rabbit hole. This may be fun. So I had a chance to do some work in New Zealand, and I said, what are they saying? And some of them spoke some Maori, the native New Zealand language. That is, by the way, the most winning rugby team in the world ever, the New Zealand All Blacks. I went to the Rugby Hall of Fame for a client, BP, British Petroleum, and they have an office that's attached to the Rugby Hall of Fame in England. It's actually part of the buildings are connected in a loose way. And no, that's not. My hotel was the outer ring of the Rugby Hall of Fame, which is Twickenham Stadium, and then BP's next to that. And the largest feature in the Rugby Hall of Fame in England is for the New Zealand All Blacks. Like, they're universally recognized as that much better than everyone else, even in competing territory. And they said each haka, it's called the haka, not everybody might know that. Each haka has different words. This one is, I'm going to cut off your head and eat it. And some of them are actually funny and trite, actually. They really run the range, apparently. But I'd like to point out that the haka and the jump at the end to build team spirit is definitely not some men-only thing. It's definitely not just machismo. It's about team spirit. Here is Nobel Prize laureate Muhammad Yunus jumping with a Scrum team. And many Scrum teams will choose when anyone moves a card to done, they'll all jump to show that it's all of us working together, and it becomes just the natural mindset of the team. I'd like to point out what the first Scrum team said this video gave for them. We said, this is why we found that video so effective. Questions about that? I loved when Diane was saying what the graphics don't show about Medco at the time. When she opened the class yesterday, thank you so much, Diane. She said there was so much energy and focus and team spirit in the organization. And she said it was one of the best places she'd ever had the privilege of working. There's a daily focus on that. Many people say once they've worked in a highly effective Scrum team, they never want to work another way again. Well, every day we're attempting to create this more than we did yesterday, every day. So no wonder that happens. No wonder many Scrum teams end up developing team cheers, team music they play when they start the day, team jerseys and nicknames, and it becomes like a pro sports team. No wonder that happens, because it's reinforced in this meeting every day. Now the purpose of the daily Scrum is to look at the burn down, the sprint burn down, and say, what are we going to do differently today than yesterday to land this on time? That's the purpose. This is the side effect. High performing teams with team spirit and focus, and the opposite of waiting on someone else to remove an issue. Folks, I'd like us to run an aggressive daily meeting. Each table has a Scrum Master. If your Scrum Master is one of the two people from Raytheon that had to leave, battlefield promotions, someone else is now Scrum Master. There's always a Scrum Master. Scrum Masters, I will ask you in a moment to invite your teams to your learning backlogs, your questions. I'll ask you to have your team stand up, hopefully with some energy, in a semicircle around your backlogs. Scrum Masters, I will ask you to ask your team 3 questions, each person individually and including yourself. What did you learn yesterday to help all of us become certified Scrum Masters? What do we need to learn today to help all of us become certified Scrum Masters? And is there anything preventing you from learning that most important thing? Scrum Masters, at the end of daily stand-up, I will need you to have written down 4 answers. You may ask your team these explicitly or you may infer them, but I will need them written down from each Scrum Master. The questions to be answered, Scrum Masters, are: what is your team's top priority learning objective? Top priority learning objective. Now that's across the whole team, so you might have to infer or ask the team to try to agree. What's your team's plan to learn it today? What is speeding up your team's learning? You can abbreviate it as accelerants.
What was that one again?
What is speeding up your team's learning? Or their accelerants. What is slowing down the team's learning? The decelerants. So the 4 questions to be answered again are: top priority, the goal, learning objective. Plan to learn it. Accelerants, decelerants. Scrum Masters, I'll know when you're done, when you'll be standing up by the monitor with me with 4 answers written down. Now, this is allowed to take a maximum of 15 minutes, but I've noticed in this classes, the Scrum Masters can usually get that with their team in 5 minutes. I'll start a 5-minute timer to check in with you. Scrum Masters, before we start, are there any questions for me? Scrum Masters, please facilitate an aggressive daily meeting at your back.
I've got them here, so in case you forget.
Perfect. I wrote it.
Okay.
So.
Let's try one now. We did.
All right. I can see the team working out. All right, great. So,
and decelerants as we go through. I'd ask you to attempt. It doesn't have to be perfect, but an attempt. Would you join me in this bold adventure? Thank you. Thank you very much. Which one of our Scrum Masters would be so kind? Okay, now please pick, even before you go, Matson, right or left?
Left.
Left. Okay, so that's this way. Everybody, we now know which order we're going to go. Diana's going to take us home. Let me know when you're ready to speak to the other Scrum Masters. Okay, here's your time.
All right, good morning. Yeah, so our team would like to prioritize the basics and just the overall mindset of what it is to be a certified Scrum Master. The way that we're going to achieve this is to continue communication with a practical example. We're going to have lunch together and just go over common themes. Just accelerate all of these, to accelerate our learning towards this goal, we're going to continue to use these practical examples. And and some of the limitations or decelerants would be just the overall large amount of content in the last 2 days that we've learned.
36 seconds. Amazing, Mattson. Are you ready? Okay, you're on.
Yes, okay. Our top priority is to learn aggressive Scrum, what it is. We're going to do that through role playing and also networking. Acceleration will be done through practice, and deceleration, we see time as a decelerator.
21 seconds. Amazing. All right, you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're on.
Okay, so our top priority is how Scrum relates to product development. And we're going to get there by asking questions and hopefully by working through the product backlog. The accelerants and what will speed up the learning is by asking specific questions and having conversation around the topics. And we felt like what might be slow in learning is when there's confusion or maybe Joe steps out of the room and like with the sizing exercise yesterday, having a little bit more activity around that has been helpful.
35 seconds. Thank you very much. Well played. And luckily the accelerants and decelerants were recorded too, so it's not just that you went fast. Hopefully there was also great content. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're on.
All right, so our top priority is to learn more about waterfall to Scrum, how that transition happened. Our plan to learn is keep asking questions and also asking that gentleman right there for a copy of the video, hopefully, of the class. What is speeding up the learning is checking with each other throughout the day about how we're learning, and also what's slowing us down is the speed of coverage sometimes and not allowing enough questions.
Fantastic. 26 seconds. Thank you so much. Gunnar, are you ready?
Always.
You're on.
So our team, we wanted to work on understanding 353, and we plan on applying yesterday's learning to today to understand it more thoroughly, and we believe that we can accelerate that process by having our two coaches or our two experts and by doing cross communication. The only problem is that we think that having side conversations might hinder us, so keeping it on scope will help us for future projects.
27 seconds. Fantastic. Are you ready?
Yes.
And you're on.
Thank you. More aggressive Scrum is difficult over 2 words, but examples and data, and also as we go through the course, having frequent retrospectives and sharing what we've learned and ideas. And I think the only thing that could possibly slow us down is time.
17 seconds from the future. Folks, that was everybody. It was less than 30 seconds a person. Even including the time I was talking, that was less than 3 minutes. What these teams just did is coordinate accelerants and impediments. That's half of everything it takes to coordinate all of Scrum. How long does it take in the companies you come from to coordinate across 6 teams right now?
For a long time.
Is it longer than 3 minutes?
Very long.
It may be worth trying this technique. This technique is called Scrum of Scrums. Teams, I would invite you to welcome your Scrum Masters as they triumphantly return to the team. Scrum Masters, thank you very much. This is half of how...
Oh yeah.
I was in one class where they took a flip chart, and several teams did it once the first team did, and they drew in color marker go and their Scrum Master's name, and they lifted it up and down. It was really good.
Got a little fan club,
Yeah,
right?
someone drew on their fingers and did this thing, I think it was their team name. It was awesome. So I have seen that one. Sometimes that kind of thing emerges. This is a diagram of Scrums. Each of these orange circles is a daily stand-up meeting, which you did, which you've done. You've just practiced. Each of these double circles is a Scrum of Scrums, where one person from each team, usually the Scrum Master, but not always, meets in a daily stand-up after the daily stand-up. The format is identical. There's a Scrum Master of Scrum of Scrums recording accelerants and decelerants, just as the Scrum Master does in the daily Scrum. And they're coordinating accelerants and decelerants across teams. Now, as a byproduct, they do also mention what their top priority goal and their plan to get it done is, which does help coordinate across teams as well. But we'll get to another method that solidifies that better in a moment, or alongside it. My question is, how does this team know to attend this Scrum of Scrums and not this one?
Must be some sort of commonality that they have ascribed to.
You are on the right track. Do you have a guess what that commonality might be, or does anyone else have a guess?
All people starting with the letter A.
It is not that. It is not. There is one that is even more directly valuable to these teams.
Similar goals?
It's very related to the goals, and I started to hear, I think, what it actually is from someone else. It's related to the goals.
The shared product backlog?
It's a flavor of a shared product backlog, as Chris Wallace just pointed out. Ideally, each of these teams can release independently. Ideally. But if these three teams merge their product, integrate it to release, they have a Scrum of Scrums. Well, here's another one. Ideally, they can then release directly. But sometimes the organization isn't refactored yet enough, and we still have some silos. So if an output of this Scrum of Scrums backlog, if something this Scrum of Scrums demos, these teams together demos, is going to go into the backlog for these teams, they're going to go to each other's Scrum of Scrums. So in this case, these teams go to a Scrum of Scrums because they integrate their product together. These teams go to the Scrum of Scrums because they integrate their product together. Then they have a joint Scrum of Scrums because apparently they integrate their product together. In this way, Scrum of Scrums is modeled after how cells share nutrients. It is the most efficient model of communication in nature. It's the most efficient model of communication we know. I'd like you to look at the area on the left. For everyone in a company of 120 people to discuss a topic just once, hopefully that drives up communication saturation. They've talked about it once. There are 7,140 communication pathways required in an organization of only 120 people. On the right, using Scrum of Scrums, there are 80% fewer communication pathways for everyone to have access to the same level of communication. This is how cells communicate. It is the most efficient method of communication we know.
Question.
Sir.
In this scaling method, are the players playing each role unique? So, for example, are the product owners unique and independent at each one of these? So never does a product owner cross over?
Now, sometimes people's names stick in my head right away, and sometimes they don't. Mike, thank you. Mike, this is about scaling the Scrum Master role.
Scrum Master.
Now, a Scrum Master is responsible for, what's the primary thing a Scrum Master does? Anybody? A guess, or remove impediments. So we're going to bubble up decelerants. Also, accelerants, things we want to do more of. We're going to bubble those up. We're going to coordinate that, right? What's the other thing a Scrum Master does? Primary.
Drive the team towards the goal.
They do that primarily by making work visible. So the team drives themselves to the goal. They essentially make sure the big billboard scoreboard is working. That's how they drive the team towards the goal. By identifying and making big and visible impediments, accelerants and decelerants, and making score visible, the burn down, the sprint backlog, the product backlog. So this meeting is for sharing how do we make work visible, what's our top priority goal, what's our plan to get it done, and our accelerants and decelerants for scaling those. That's this meeting. So this is not the product owner. We will talk about the other half of scaling in brief, how the product owner scales. But we will do that in a product owner class. We just don't have the time. But we will at least mention it. So you'll have at least heard the other half of scaling, but we've practiced how the Scrum Master scales, as this is a Scrum Master class. This is step one. Mike, was that useful at all?
Yes.
Okay, maybe, okay.
Can I just get a quick clarification question?
I'll try, Mattson.
This is a goal for sprint goal outcomes, or is this a product outcome?
So product owners own the product backlog. That is the other half of scaling. We'll talk about that in brief in a moment. This is how multiple teams, if you have one Scrum team, you don't yet need to do this. If you have 3 Scrum teams working together to achieve a common goal, they'll have a daily stand-up after the daily stand-up to coordinate impediments and decelerants to help share impediment. But what if a team has an impediment and another team already solved it? They mention it here, and the other Scrum Master has a chance after the stand-up to say, my team tried this. I'd like to help you try it. That's what this meeting is for. Or HR is going to have to change policy to knock that impediment out. Which one of us is going to then go to HR, right? And which they do, right? So refactor the organization. Did that help?
I was asking about the goal. Where is that goal coming from?
That's in the other meeting. We're not there yet. This is accelerants, decelerants, making work visible. We're not yet talking about coordinating the sprint goal. That's another thing that's owned by the product owner.
Okay, I thought that was one of the 4 questions that we answered up there. What's their
Oh,
priority?
they're making visible the sprint goal. We're not going to change it in this meeting. Scrum Masters don't have authority over the sprint
But
goal.
we're talking about the sprint goal, not any other goal.
Oh, I hear you.
Okay,
I hear what
so
you're
yeah.
saying. Yes, it'll be, well, what's your goal right now, right? And if you're doing this every day, like fast teams do, it'll be what's the piece of the sprint goal that's right now, right? It's
Okay.
as of today, what is the team's goal? Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of the way companies report when they have more than one Scrum team, how they scale, 72% say they use Scrum of Scrums, what you just did. 72% of companies who have more than one Scrum team and they're attempting to coordinate them say they're doing it the way you just did. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't coordinate product backlog. That's the other half. And most companies don't have a mechanism to do that at all yet. That's how new many companies think this is. So I would like to show you how product owners do coordinate product backlog, because a lot of companies are missing it, they say. 27% of companies say they're using a technique called the Scaled Agile Framework. So it's far and away the minority, but it's worth talking about. So the Scaled Agile Framework has the best marketing ever. The acronym is SAFE. So if you were a Scrum Master and you wanted to coordinate better with 2 other Scrum teams, 3 other Scrum teams, 100 other Scrum teams, and you go to senior management and say, I need budget to skill up all of our Scrum teams on a method so we can coordinate. Senior management, to approve the expense, might say, well, how would you propose we do that? 1% of companies approve using recipes for agile governance in the organization, or RAGE. 4% of companies will approve disciplined agile delivery, and they'll say, I don't know if we're ready for the disciplined approach, without even knowing what it is, which is actually an excellent approach in my mind. 6% will approve large-scale Scrum or less, which in my opinion is actually one of the best we've talked about so far as things go. But the less framework to coordinate teams, senior leadership might say, is that enough? Whereas 27% sight unseen will say, yeah, I'll sign the check for the SAFE method of coordinating Scrum teams. Unfortunately, SAFE is getting better every release. It's in version 4. It's better than it's ever been. It's quite robust. Unfortunately, it has some flaws that create a glass ceiling where teams will stop accelerating. And it is not able, it doesn't recognize refactoring above one level of the organization. So a senior leadership group is prevented from evolving using retrospectives or Kaizen events in the Scaled Agile framework. Scrum Inc. does not recommend it. However, it has fantastic marketing. What we would propose instead is what General McChrystal wrote about when he indexed the number of US and Allied troop deaths by project management type. Talk about the ultimate statistic. The most US and Allied troops died when Central Command Control Authority sent commands to localized authority, which sent commands to squads, special forces units. The most US and Allied troops died. Fewer U.S. and Allied troops died when Central Command and Control Authority sent commands to networks of intelligence gathering organizations with operation teams, strike teams. The fewest U.S. and Allied troops died when we had networks of information gathering of intel groups directly coordinating with strike teams that acted fully autonomously, launching their own missions, funding their own missions. General McChrystal is currently working with Scrum Inc. This is called Scrum at Scale in the military. He wrote a fantastic book on this called Team of Teams that Scrum Inc. highly recommends. Here is a hardware company. Well, they also have a software component that runs on their hardware doing Scrum of Scrums. Now, a savvy coach may notice they have what are called functional groups. So they are beginning. They're at the beginning of their journey. The best Scrum of Scrums is where we have cross-functional teams with people from every function. But in this case, they have a Scrum team from each previous silo in the company. So they're at step one. And still, look what they say it did for them. After a series of failed product releases, we adopted a program of Scrum of Scrums. They invited the Scrum Master from the software group, the Scrum Master from the manufacturing group, the Scrum Master from sales and marketing, the lead from qualification. Not every group was using Scrum. A question is often on team learning backlogs, how do we interface with other groups that aren't yet using Scrum? Scrum of Scrums is perfect. They don't even have to know it's a Scrum meeting. They're just invited to a daily meeting once a day with the head of each department, some of whom happen to be these Scrum Master things, but that's fine. They don't know it's a Scrum meeting, they just know it takes only 15 minutes. That's great. So the head of qualification, the Scrum Master of customer support, the Scrum Master of chemistry, so they're making their own inks. These are food grade printers. This is a company called Markham. If you've ever seen how it's made of a Coca-Cola bottling plant, where cans and bottles, and in also some cases vegetables, are flying across a printer to get a bottle date or a born-on date or a harvested date, and it's printed in food grade ink, chances are that was a Markham printer. They have far and away the market share majority. So they make their own inks, food grade inks, and the Scrum Master of electromechanical. Now, those senior leadership that owns the money, the people who want the work done, are very interested in this meeting, but they're told they're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. So they're standing in a line behind the Scrum of Scrums, very awkwardly listening as hard as they can. They say this was very uncomfortable for people in the beginning. They say it had a huge impact on communication and problems resolution. The manufacturing manager reports, I was reluctant at first, but the daily Scrum of Scrums was the key reason this is the best launch in our history. This was their very first release with no defects found in field, ever. These groups coordinate every day. What's your top priority goal? What's your plan to get it done? What's speeding you up? What's slowing you down? That's all they needed to share in order to get all the defects out, because they knocked out the impediments. Meanwhile, management is hearing the impediments, and hopefully they're acting on some of them, right? But they're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. It's one way. They're servant leading for the people doing the work. Folks, questions about Scrum of Scrums, scaling the Scrum Master's side of coordinating across Scrum teams? Okay, let's scale the whole organization. And if I could have a burn down. These planes are the Saab Gripen, as mentioned. These planes are built, they tell me, using Scrum in 1 week iterations, and they release a new jet, the whole jet, every 6 months. So how does it work? We have our Scrum Masters here. Each Scrum Master has one and only one team, and every team has one and only one Scrum Master. If that's not true in your organization today, I recommend trying to fix that first. 353. It's only 11 rules. Try to get the 11 rules before you scale anything. Let's scale good stuff. So we have each Scrum Master has a team. They protect the team from interruptions by redirecting interruptions to the product owner. They visualize progress, impediments, and the burn down chart. They are a servant leader. They have complete responsibility through trust. They coach the team and product owner in Scrum. They implement the values of the Agile Manifesto. They facilitate Scrum ceremonies. They ensure, the meetings. They ensure work and impediments are made visible. They maintain external radiators of team progress. They encourage openness and transparency. They identify issue and ensure impediments are resolved. They promote Kaizen, or good change thinking, and waste reduction. Here are 5 teams the scrum of scrums. What you just did, we did it across 6 teams. That's already getting a little big. And I'll show you why in the next slide. Although I bet some of you know already, many of you know already. But for 5 teams, the scrum of scrums meet for 15 minutes after their 15-minute daily stand-up. And they have scrum of scrums where they just repeat the daily stand-up. Well, what if we have 25 teams? One person from each of those meetings attend the scrum of scrums. We've now consumed 45 minutes. 15 minutes, 15 minutes. This is our third 15 minutes. And 25 teams of scale. What if we do that again? Here's an organization of 125 teams. This is an actual model from 3M HIS. After their scrum of scrums, the last 5 Scrum Masters, just one out of each 5. So these are Scrum Masters just from any 5 teams, and they can rotate who it is each day. It's not a senior position or anything like that. It's whose team had a burning impediment that wasn't able to be solved at an earlier Scrum of Scrums. That's who goes on, right? They present in front of what is called the Executive Action Team. And present is the wrong word. They have scrums, and the attendees are 5 Scrum Masters and the Executive Action Team. The Executive Action Team is a group of executives who have authority up to reorganizing the organization. So at least one person is from human resources there, at least a CXO is there. Who that is can change. It can fluctuate, that's fine. Their job is to take whatever impediment came up that day and remove it that day. That's their job. So whichever day they're an executive action team member, this is their one job. They actually have to clear their plate. That's how this works. There's our Scrum Master. Let's see the, sir, yes.
Could you go by, over the last 3 slides, I'm sort of still
yes.
struggling and visualizing which impediments make it to where through this process.
Let me try, Mike. Let's do this together. So we have 6 teams here. 1, 2, yeah, we have 6 teams here. So teams brought up impediments and accelerants, which we have logged, or a version of logging. We have some notes. Thank you so much. Right after daily stand-up, the Scrum Masters typically swarm to say which of these impediments can we pull to one of our backlogs to get it done. That's the job. So impediments become cards that go into backlogs. We'll discuss that later after lunch during a pattern that's called the interrupt pattern that Chris Wallace coached the state of Washington in on Wednesday. Until we discuss the interrupt pattern, this might not be too clear, so we'll discuss that part in more detail later. But for now, suffice it to say, I hope, the Scrum Masters are going to take newly written backlog of impediments to their product owners and say, will this fit in any of our backlogs? Because we are going to fix this now. Every day, new backlog gets added to the product backlog of impediments to remove. If no product owners have room, or if an impediment requires senior sign-off, like changing a vendor. This vendor is not going to meet us on time. We just find that out today, but they're signed into our contract. They're the CFO's cousin, whatever the reason is. We need top-level approval to change vendor, but we will not ship on time if we don't change vendor. That's an impediment that needs to go up. They can't solve it right now. Either no one has room to work on it, and we'll talk about how we assess the room later in the interrupt pattern, or no one can. They don't have the authority. It requires signatory authority from higher up in the organization. So it gets, whoever has that impediment is one of the 5 people that goes to the next Scrum of Scrums. Did that get it?
I'm on the path to getting it.
We're closer.
Yeah.
Something to chew on. Okay. We will model it similar through the product owner. Now, product owners own what? What do product owners own?
Backlog.
The product backlog. So how are we going to scale the product backlog? So each team has one and only one product owner. What happens if one Scrum team has 2 product owners? Chaos. It's difficult for someone on the team to instantly know what is the highest priority to work on. What happens if a team does not have a product owner? Chaos. The team works in random order. What happens if 2 teams have the same product owner?
Coordination, I hope.
Chaos half the time.
Oh, no.
That is exactly it. I mean, imagine if 2 NFL top teams had 1 head coach. Half the time you're not with the team. Are you likely to win? No! This is about the professional sport of project delivery. There's one product owner per team. So each team has one and only one product owner. The product owner sets the team priorities by prioritizing the backlog. They're a servant leader. They spend half the time with the customer, the stakeholders, regulatory compliance officials, half the time with the team doing the work. They have a single backlog. There's big chunks, which we can call epics, and those chunks are split into smaller chunks. We can call them stories. Same thing, just big and small is all I'm trying to differentiate here. They specify what the team is going to build, but not how. The team owns how to do it. That's explicit in Scrum. Systems thinking, they oversee the whole product vision or service vision, whatever the team is building. They have complete responsibility through trust. They are the known, stable interface to the enterprise. They are the only part of the team that is interruptible during the sprint.
Hey, Joe?
Yes?
So between epics and stories, so is epics just very high level?
An epic, fantastic question, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you.
A chunk of the backlog, the difference between an epic and a story is only size. If a story is so big it can be split into multiple stories, we can call it an epic. If a story has been split so small that it now specifies what to do, how, it says, just install the database already. It's not as who anything. We split it so small, it's just, okay, do this. We now call that a task. But that's it. It's just granularity. Epic, stories, tasks. I don't feel a need to differentiate them most of the time. It's merely size. Some of the tools people may use, like Jira, care a lot, whether you call it an epic, a task, or a story. Scrum doesn't care. Some tools care, and that's fine. Maybe it's advantageous for your team's workflow. Scrum doesn't care. They're just big to small. Sir?
I was just going to add, because you just mentioned the tools, we use Target Process, which goes
Sure.
epic, feature, user story, task, drills it all the way down to a bug level.
Also fine.
Okay, so it's in relation to size. So a feature is not necessarily a part of our product that we would work on.
That's up to the team. Scrum
Okay.
doesn't care.
Okay.
Scrum cares there's stuff in a backlog, and big stuff is further down. By the time it gets to the top, it's small.
Okay, so it's how we choose to define it.
Yes. Now here's an opportunity. Every retrospective, the team is going to implement a Kaizen, something to be faster and happier. Well, what if the Kaizen is to change the way we call something and what we mean by a theme and an epic and a feature? We might have to change tool. Some tools will prevent some types of Kaizens. The most agile system is sticky notes on a whiteboard. Scrum Inc. endorses sticky notes on a whiteboard. So each team has one and only one product owner. Here are 5 teams, and look what they do. The 5 product owners meet, and they have a backlog together. And they say, here's a product that all 5 of our teams are building together, or here's a mission that all 5 of our teams are trying to achieve together. And it has a backlog. These product owners meet twice. In which meeting in Scrum does the team look at the big chunks of the backlog, re-estimate them, and split big chunks into smaller chunks?
Refinement.
Yep. So these product owners meet in what's called meta-Scrum refinement. They look at their parent backlog and they refine it. And they invite subject matter experts, often their team members, and they do this every sprint. And they refine the parent backlog. Then, in which Scrum meeting does the team pull the work from the product backlog that they're actually going to execute? Sprint planning. The product owners also meet in what's called meta-Scrum sprint planning, or Scrum at Scale sprint planning. It's where they pull from the parent backlog and take chunks to their team. Now those chunks may be very new to the team. So that has to happen before the team's sprint, the team level product backlog refinement. So meta-Scrum sprint planning, the product owners pull chunks from the parent backlog and bring it to the team product backlog. Then the team meets with that product owner to refine it in their product backlog, and then the team does their sprint plan. 5 teams have just coordinated here. What if we wanted to coordinate more than 5? So 5 times 25, wait, 5 times 5, there's 25 people here coordinated. What if we have a larger organization? They simply do that again. There's meta-Scrum. They meet twice to refine that parent backlog and to pull from that print backlog. What if we need to do that again? Here are 500 people scaled, and they do it with meta-Scrum. This is a diagram of 3M HIS, Health Information Systems. Folks, this is is all that is needed to coordinate every aspect of Scrum. The product owner is scaled and the Scrum Master is scaled. For those of you to whom this is critical to your business, I highly encourage you to attend the Scrum at Scale class. It's 2 days of practicing this. But you've seen it in brief. You have at least seen it. So what does it all look like working together? Here's Scrum at very large scale. 125 people scaled. We have the product owners and the Scrum Masters meeting. 250 people scaled. We have the product owners and the Scrum Masters meeting. Sob Defense, 4,096 people scaled in 1 hour. Here's what they say they do every day. At 7:30, the Scrum Masters host the first daily Scrum. At 7:45, 1 out of 5 of each of those people go to Scrum of Scrums. At 8 o'clock, 1 out of 5 of those people go to Scrum of Scrums. At 8:15, Scrum of Scrums. At 8:30, 5 Scrum Masters meet in front of the senior leadership at Sob Defense. What I've been told is the senior leadership at Sob Defense, these are people on the board, owners and investors. These people, their only job from 8:30 until the end of the day is to remove whatever impediments they were handed. They said if you actually want to fly a new jet every week, this is what you have to do. If there's anything else you want to do as a senior executive at Sob Defense, you need to get it done before 8:30 in the morning. That's aggressive Scrum. That's 4,096 people scaled in an hour. That's all the deeper I wanted to go into Scrum at Scale in this class. I'm glad you got to see it. If this is core to your work, come to the Scrum at Scale class. We'll do it a lot more for 2 days. But now you've seen it. This class is principally about how to get one team to hyper-productivity. And if you do have other teams in your organization where someone has already set up Scrum at Scale, that you know the names of those meetings. Now do note there's no new meetings. None. Scrum of Scrums is just daily stand-up repeated. Meta Scrum refinement is just product backlog refinement repeated. Meta Scrum planning is just sprint planning repeated. That is it. Now some teams now are also repeating the retrospective. I find that to be incredibly useful. More and more companies are doing it. It will probably be named Meta Scrum retrospective soon, or Scrum at Scale retrospective. All 5 meetings in Scrum have value to be scaled. But that is it. They simply repeat for each 5 teams. That's all. General questions about Scrum at Scale. Deeper questions I'll defer to a Scrum at Scale class. Sir?
Do they all have to be running the same sprint cycle for it to be effective?
Okay, I'm glad someone asked because I forgot to say it. What I think I'm learning so far, this is not yet a law or a dogma. What I think I'm learning so far, other coaches shout out if you've seen something that works better or differently, is if teams don't have the same sprint cycle, they have trouble releasing together. Say there's a team on a 3-week sprint and a team on a 4-week sprint. How many weeks will it be until they line up to release together? 12 weeks. So I've run into a lot of problems. I used to say, teams do what they want. That's agile, right? And what the scale that fits them. And we had real trouble releasing. They could work independently, but when it came to actually deliver product, it was a problem. So the last few years, I've mandated, which I always feel wary of when I say that, so I'm interested in other opinions or other evidence. But I've been mandating, and so has all of Scrum Inc., that teams all start and end on the same sprint cadence once the second Scrum team starts in the organization.
Okay.
For that reason. I'm open to finding a more agile way. I just haven't seen it in the last few years. Dr. Mattarelli.
Make it easier when you have the same cadence. It's easier to coordinate everything.
I'm good.
Answers it perfectly.
Okay.
That was something I was just wondering how they match up.
Petri, it
And
looks
I
good.
would always keep an eye open for very good reasons to deviate from that with the permission of the other teams, in which they could figure out what they're going to coordinate. For a time, and then you go back to the scale.
We want to be agile, complex adaptive systems. The fewest rules required to allow radical self-organization that's effective, right? And we know 10 rules is what most of nature uses. Scrum is already at 11, right? So we want to be very hesitant about adding any other mandate. Right now, yeah, so I like where Petri's going with this. If you have great information radiators on progress, you can probably experiment with different release cycles and know what's happening, right? Yeah, Jack.
Comment and question. Let's use the example of Slob. That just comes across as being frighteningly fast.
Yeah.
I mean, when 4,096 people went out.
Yes, yeah.
It's almost just
Jane's Aviation Weekly writes, this is the world's most cost-effective military aircraft. It's winning every award in military aviation. Nothing is competing with this right now, unless there's a country law saying they're not allowed to buy from Sweden. Right? That's the only reason people aren't buying this plane, as far as I can tell. It's winning everything. To your point, Jack.
Yeah. And just a very broad general question. Why are more companies embracing this?
Oh, you know, I think we're bottlenecked by coaches and trainers that know it and implementers that know it. So we just hosted the second Scrum Inc. Train the Trainer class, Monday, Tuesday. There's now 37 people that have been through that in the world. Last count, there were 240 some, last count I made, there were 240 some certified Scrum trainers on the planet. I have more phone calls and emails, and I bet a lot of people in the room do, than we can respond to. I think that's the challenge, right? How many people are a certified Scrum Master or who have ever been through Scrum at Scale in the state of Washington? Not that many, I bet. And as a percentage, I bet it's less than 1%. I think there's a challenge of awareness because there's a bottleneck of supply. I'm so glad you're here, Jack. Please spread the good news. Sir.
I think another thing related to it, there are a lot of companies out there that know the terminology of Scrum, but not the spirit of Scrum.
Sure. We've seen it where people call their release plan the requirements gathering sprints, and then the analysis sprints. No, you're missing it. Those even all happen in the same sprint for this to work. So yeah, that happens. Where I think the root of that is bad or lack of training. After a class like this, taught by any of us, I think it's pretty clear what we would try to do. And I think a lot of people haven't done that. I think. That's my guesstimate. Because it's not hard. There's only 11 rules, but I think a lot of people don't even know those.
But I'm saying even a lot of the training companies are teaching Scrum or Fall.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We've probably all seen a certified Scrum trainer or two who taught something that was unlikely to deliver twice the value half the time. That's true. One of Scrum Inc.'s goals is to help establish useful Scrum that will double revenue, which is what Scrum always was. But anything can be diluted, right? So hopefully we will all do our part. Patrick, yes.
One thing regarding a lot of organizers are not willing to put in the time and money needed to learn more.
It's a mindset.
Oh, sure, right. You see it at value.
It's equivalent to learning the old way of working. You think of how long it took you to establish the previous way of working. Getting good at Scrum will be equally difficult. Maybe not as difficult, maybe it's like the whole time. It's going to take time, and you have to put your mind to it, you have to put money into it. That's an example where you get the dividends. Create products that just storm the world, dominate. Look at Google, look at Amazon, look at Apple, look at Facebook. Where's the competition? Significant competition for those companies right now.
To Petrie's point, what we can say that I think is heartening, in geographies where agility is becoming part of the culture, that's both coasts in the US and the West Coast even a little bit earlier, so I would say even a little more, and then a lot of the Scandinavian countries. And we look at the top market cap companies in the world, 2 of them of the top 5 are in this city. There's a reason for that, I think. 4 of the top 5 are in the Pacific time zone of the world. Like, there's a reason it emanates from areas where people hold these values. They're interested in collaboration, right? That said, it's radically growing. We see a whole bunch in Minneapolis. We see a lot in Eastern Europe now. And the Scandinavian countries have a whole bunch, but they haven't yet done Scrum at scale, so they haven't grown that big yet. They bottleneck themselves in size. Only companies that have effective coordination have become very large, and that's mostly in the Pacific time zone right now. Very large agile companies. But it's growing. And I'd say it certainly seems to be the cultural area. And how easy is it to apply these principles to people who already are interested in the values of the Agile Manifesto? And I think that's regional, and I think that's growing. Right? So we maybe start with some culture shock, which is cheaper in an area that already has some of that culture. Let's go on. There is more. Oh gosh, let's go on. There is more. What if we have a Scrum team in more than one time zone? Is that anyone's world in here? If it's not, we'll pull this section for time. Okay, then I will like to share the best Scrum Inc. has yet observed on how to deal with Scrum in multiple time zones. CRC Dynex is one of only 2 case studies with CMMI auditors, vetted data, highly vetted data, to show almost as high speed as a local Scrum team. The fastest Scrum teams that have ever been observed are sitting this close together or closer all day. That is the fastest. Distributing a team, having outsourced test, or whatever the model companies have tried, historically is extremely slow. It creates a bottleneck and a handoff where half the time, at the worst case, you can't even communicate with each other. CRC Dynex, it was almost as fast. Co-located on-site Scrum was 17.8 function points per developer per month. Function points is a standardized measuring unit used when data is audited. Outsourced Scrum, where part of the team was in multiple time zones, 15.3 function points per developer per month. Almost as high. This has only been recorded twice. What did they do? Here's their daily stand-up, the green bars. And they did this across 5 geographies, but in this graph I'm just going to show 2 for simplicity. But this went on through 5 geographies. In St. Petersburg, at the start of their day, they had daily stand-up, just like you folks just did. And then near the end of their day, they had a second daily stand-up every day. And that was the start of the day for the Provo, Utah team, and they did this through video chat. So they would have 2 daily stand-ups to create rolling teams. Now these people are members of the same team. And they would say, here's what our top priority goal is today, all of our shared top priority goal, our plan to get it done, accelerants, decelerants, every day. And they're doing this in front of the virtual burn down and replanning. This is the fastest we've seen in distributed Scrum. And I'll show one other example that came very close in a company Paul Tacken works in. This was not a small project. This was a software project, and they have over 1 million lines of Java code. So this is a highly complex, large project that they're doing simultaneously in 5 deliveries, 5 geographies, and getting exceptionally fast speed through what we now call the distributed daily stand-up, or the distributed daily meeting, which means hosting it more than once per day, once for each geography in a rolling time zone. The other company where this has been observed while being audited is Xavia in the Netherlands. And they were making the ProRail system, the digital signage at each tram and train stop to show when the train's coming, where it is now, and it's trending towards you. Several team members in India had earlier experience with offshore development. Most had experienced a lot of distrust and misunderstanding. Being in one team with onshore colleagues made a huge difference. They flew all the Indian teams in to the Netherlands to work co-located with the Dutch teams, well, as one team, until they established double the velocity of any previous waterfall team that had worked on the ProRail system before. Once they doubled the team, they said, we don't want to distribute bad Scrum, so let's not fly anyone back until they're double the speed any waterfall team has had on this project. Then they flew the Indian developers back to India. Working jointly to solve a problem is a great way to resolve conflict. They modeled this after a case study from 1954 where Boy Scouts were on an island as part of their summer camp. And the supply boat to pick them up isn't going to come for X amount of time, towards the end of the summer. This is a true story, and it's what the movie and book The Lord of the Flies is based on. Here's what happened. The group of Boy Scouts was big enough that they each had 2 kind of sub-camps on each side of the island, and they started referring to it as them versus us, just naturally, as kids might, right? Well, it got so heated, they started trying to kill each other. And the camp counselors, there's very few camp counselors, and the supply boat is not coming for a long time. What are we going to do? They're making spears. They're trying to kill each other, right? We are out of control. The only solution, and this is what Xavia modeled it after, was they shut off the fresh water supply. The camp counselors sabotaged it. They broke the system. And they explained to the Boy Scouts, we're going to have to all work together to solve this problem. That totally resolved it. They were one team again. So shared work on a common problem prevents the us versus them mentality. So when we have a group of teams in multiple time zones, making sure they're working on the same problem and they have a shared meeting to work it is what prevents the us versus them mentality, the best we know from the Robbers Cave experiment in 1954. So Xebia used that as the model. One of the teams had a local velocity decrease after flying back to India. Root cause analysis indicated the Indians were waiting for a senior Indian developer to tell them what to do. They weren't self-motivated to grab backlog in the best order they thought. The same day this was determined, the Dutch Scrum Master demoted themselves, or changed role, to become a team member, and the lead Indian developer became the Scrum Master with the goal of solving this problem. You see what they did there? That was smart. And they did that the same day. I mean, that was quick thinking. Distributed velocity immediately went up to previous established local velocity. Quietly brilliant. That's the best Scrum Inc. has observed about distributed Scrum. The Cliff Notes version is, if you can, don't do it. It's faster if you don't. But if you have to, or if that's your world now, that's the best practice we have. Now the next section I see in my backlog is Scrum Board, but I'm in a section called Descaling. So what's happened? What's in your guys' printed materials? It is
The
descaling?
very last one.
Yeah, it looks like you got moved over there. Daily Scrum scaling.
Very bottom of that list.
Oh yeah, there's one that says scaling all the way at the bottom, or way down there. There you go.
Then, and so we just did Scrum at scale. So co-trainers, I don't know how you're gonna count this, but that happened. And then do I have one for, distributed Scrum is part of Scrum at scale. So yes, that did just end now. And this is apparently now, and then I think we're gonna be right at break. So I don't know, pardon me, backlog could have been better refined. Many companies are interested in how they get more and more and more Scrum teams running aggressive Scrum. They love that. That is a hot topic right now. Scrum Inc. is far more interested in how do you get one team to do the work of 5 teams and be even happier. Far more interesting, far more cost effective. Here's the best we've learned about that. We call it descaling, like cleaning the pipes so work can flow. This is the Mach Speed team at SimpliVity. This is the same building as Amazon Robotics with automated fork trucks. So for those of you that were in the Train the Trainer class last year, and I showed a video of Amazon Robotics, then called Kivia, this is the same building. We now have more data about them. In release 1, the teams had a velocity of 8 points. In release 2, they had a velocity of 10 points. In release 3, they had a velocity of 8 points again. They're using stable reference stories, so we have a continuous velocity. We have comparable velocity. In release 4, they had 61 points, 6x velocity. So we asked the Scrum Master, what did they do? What happened? And here's what they wrote. They said the team became stable. Before, teams were being lent out for different special projects. Here, they were one team working on one backlog, sitting at a table this size, this close or closer together all day, every day. That's all they changed. And the output per amount of time went up to 61 points, 6x, because context switching was shut off more than it ever had been. And it continues to climb as they remove impediments each sprint, as you would expect. Then it jumps again to 115, 11x their previous velocity. Per developer, they're putting out as much work as 11 people. This is hardware and software together, same team. They say they're now tracking all work. Before, research was stuff done on your own time to try to stay cutting edge. Bug fix was work done on your own time. And the process improvement to make the team faster from each retrospective was done on the team's own time. They started explicitly tracking that, and they introduced a buffer for emergency work. Now they completed work in this buffer. This way, when something broke in production, hardware or software, and someone rushed into the team saying, fix this now, they had left points unassigned in the sprint as a buffer to take emergency work in the same sprint. We'll model that pattern after lunch, I think, is when it's trending to be. Velocity then went up to 16x. Scrum Inc. has seen many teams achieve 15x. But for whatever reason, that seemed to be a sound barrier, a glass ceiling teams weren't going faster than 15x. Now, let me tell you, in companies where the teams have hit 15x, the investors are already so deliriously happy, it almost doesn't matter. But in Scrum Inc., we academically wondered, how come it doesn't go faster than that? SimpliVity is the first company we tracked with audited metrics that went past 15x. Now we've seen a few. So apparently there was some kind of sound barrier, and once a company broke it, a few more teams are. So they went to 16x, and then it tumbled to only 13x the previous velocity. But we asked immediately, why did it go down? Was it not sustainable? Because that's what we'd want to know. Is it impossible to hold that? And they did a root cause analysis, and one of the developers admitted a manager had come to them and made a secret agreement for them to work off backlog on a pet project in exchange for a promotion. That never happens, right?
Touché.
The developer admitted to the team what happened, totally crestfallen. The team reacted, went through all the stages of grief, forgave them, bonded as a team again, went as a team to that manager and said, we will never do this again. We've written you up in HR. We're going back to being a team. And that manager was later diagnosed by HR as an organizational psychopath. That went on their career record in the company, and it was a thing. So the team solved it immediately. Velocity immediately went back up to 16x, is what they've done.
Quick question.
Sir.
The term debt and spike?
Sure. Would anyone in the room, we have half coaches and trainers, hazard to give a good tweet-length definition for technical debt? First hand I saw was here.
Technical debt is anything that's going to cost a lot of time and money to switch because we built it in a way that it's hard to change. So if somebody comes out with technology that makes ours obsolete, it's going to take us 9 months to just catch up. Because of the way we coded it when we built it, our cost of change is high, so we have technical debt in 9 months.
I totally agree, and I saw another hand, and a range of opinions is always good. Dr. Mattarelli.
It's a metaphor based on monetary debt. So if you cut corners and don't build a quality in, then you're going to accumulate debt just like on a credit card. You eventually have to pay back. Then once you make a change, it'll break 5 things in the system. Eventually you might have technical bankruptcy. You have to rebuild the program.
Fantastic. Both those definitions together, I think, complemented each other nicely. You want to add something?
I can give an example from when we went down to Olympia on
Pretty quick
Wednesday.
One,
They had 5,000 build warnings that they had never bothered to clear from the builds, and we're just living with it. And that ended up biting me.
So here it's measuring retiring the debt? Is that what it's measuring we're talking about?
Yeah, that's time. So they're going so fast now, to your point, Mike. They're going, I mean, look how fast they're going compared to how fast they were used to going before. They're going so fast, the product owner is saying, and here's time just to fix corners we cut earlier because we were going so fast, which makes it easier to build on and accelerates velocity again. And they're saying, we're going so fast, we have all this extra time, let's conduct research on cutting edge systems. So the team gets even smarter and savvier, but also they're more motivated because they know they're working on the best technologies in the world now. They know they are working on the hottest stuff in their field globally. And of course that's empowering. So they're even faster. And a spike is the research, by the way. It's called a research spike. It's one of the 3 special story types. I don't plan to go into much detail in that, but if it's near the top of teams' backlogs near the end of the class, we will. But that is research. Excellent. Okay. Now the SimpliVity team did something that was really savvy in my opinion. They had one hyper-productive team. So they put them in a great big open work area with no walls. A room a lot like this, but a little bigger. The Mach Speed team, as they were called, was the center team working at a table almost exactly like this, hardware and software. And they put 9 other teams around them. Just a minute, Jack. One more, please. They put 9 other teams around them, no walls in between. So everybody could hear and see everybody all the time. What this did is, by observing the high-performing team, all the other 9 teams went up to 4x on average. So one 16x team didn't magically clone more 16x teams. But making that team's work highly visible to as many other teams as they could, and the most that they were able to geographically get within earshot and eyesight of the team was 9. It did pull them all up to 4x. So one hyper-productive team made visible, put on display, not breaking up the team, putting it on display, solves or self-coaches other teams around them. And Jack, you wanted to add something?
We'll come back on.
Okay.
Especially with disruptive domains.
Well, I appreciate it, but to be continued then. Okay. At SimpliVity, they say one aggressive Scrum team is equivalent to 5 of what they used to call a Scrum team, their mamby-pamby Scrum, right? And by the way, their definition of aggressive Scrum was just actually doing 3-5-3, right? Actually doing Scrum was their definition. Faster, it only takes a few sprints to boot up versus hiring 5 more teams worth of people. Cooler, the product owner has so much time that they can provide some to the team to remove technical debt, previous corners they cut, hardware and software. They can allocate points to innovation. The teams are motivated to produce better product. It's cheaper because they got all this speed without hiring 5 more teams worth of people. Their product is produced at 20% of the cost. And SimpliVity was just sold. I don't remember the dollar value off the top of my head. I think it was $6.5 billion. I think it's public. We can Google it. But they made a ton of money. That was their goal. They were Series A, Series B, Series C, sell. And this was the ramp up to get the product so cheap it was disruptive to buy at a massive profit margin for SimpliVity, which worked. It just happened. So this is Scrum to grow the company's valuation and multiplier for sale, is what they did. This is Scrum Inc.'s cheat sheet of 11 ways to double velocity. This is above and beyond Core Scrum. So we did Core Scrum yesterday, right? We've done that. It's old hat now. We'll practice the 5 meetings of Scrum, but we've done it. Now we're talking about speeding up teams once they already have 3-5-3. This is our hit list. As coaches, we come in and attempt to see if the organization has tolerance to do any of these. And we work them in order. And each one of these is likely to double the team's current velocity at the level it is. Are there questions about any of the items on this list, especially for the newer folks in the room?
T-shaped.
Yeah, glad you asked. So an I-shaped person would be someone with a deep skill in one discipline. They may even be a PhD, but in any case, they're very skilled in one area. A T-shaped person is someone who has a deep skill and continually tries to grow deeper in a skill. They're professionally passionate, but they're interested in helping in at least 2 other areas. A team of T-shaped people is robust. Any one person can get sick. They're collaborative. They can help each other in their work. Everyone can at least pair, if not even swarm. It's much faster. Okay. Other question about the 11 ways Scrum Inc. reports to double velocity?
Buffer, tell us more.
It's coming soon. So yes, you're right, I haven't. It's coming soon.
Is that specific the order that you would like to do them?
No.
Alright, so you can pick any order that makes sense in any context.
The best I know, yes. However, because he asked, Jeff has a subset of 7 of these that if the company's velocity doesn't double and they actually do it, so they show like CMMI compliance auditors show they do it, he'll give their money back for any training they did with Scrum Inc. But only 7 of these. And the reason is, I don't have it, that's why I didn't say it the first time. 7 of these are guaranteed by Scrum Inc. But yeah, as far as I know, I've worked them in any order, and so far Jeff hasn't told me no.
You said something that implies another that.
Oh, right, we make a backlog out of them, but what I have to do is it's the order in which the company will tolerate trying them. Because all of these are disruptive. Dedicated teams, that's the opposite of matrixing. In some companies, that's like going to the dentist, even asking for this. It's almost a non-starter, so they're willing to try that at all, right? Going away from the matrix. Okay, that is in your printed materials for your reference. It is break apocalypse now. It is 10:41. We will